My guest today is a best-selling author. She is an endo warrior and she is a professionally trained chef. I mean, we are talking Le Cordon Bleu. She has credentials for days. Her Instagram is fun for longer than that. It is amazing that Chef Bae has not been on the show before, but here she is today. Chef Bae is here with us on the exam room. So good to see you, Chef.
Hi, that was a perfect intro. So great to see you too.
It's really good to see you, and I can tell that, like, you're all business. Like, I love your bubbly personality, but you're all business because you've got that big headset on, like you're like a sports commentator at the football game getting ready to call the play-by-play. I'm digging what's happening.
Yeah, I have a podcast, so I had a mic for a long time and I was trying to get the heads like the earbuds in and I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna get as legit as possible and have it one and done.
Do you worry so much about your hair knowing that you're gonna put the cans on too?
No, I mean I have bangs, so the bangs can kind of fill the face frame and yeah, I'm not too worried. It's all about like audio quality and then the rest just kind of falls into place.
Oh, this interview is so long overdue. It is not what anybody tuning in right now expected to hear, but just know that from one podcaster to another, I appreciate you, Bay.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And I'm all business too. I like to have fun, but we got a lot of work to do in the world. So we can't do it with poor audio quality. That's for sure.
Preach it, preach it. Um, so let's talk about your story. This is your first time here on the exam
Yeah.
room, and for the roomies who aren't familiar with you, your journey to plant-based came like millions of other women who are struggling with endometriosis, but you were one of the few, I feel, who have been able to link diet to disease as
Yeah.
well. Let's start with your journey. It says right there at the top of your Instagram, Endo Warrior.
Yeah.
When did your symptoms first appear?
When I first got my period when I was 11. So I was, like any other regular preteen, got my period, and then I thought I was dying, basically. And my mom was like, It's fine. Like, painful periods are in our family. You just have to get through it. And then, like, every month, it was a factor of just getting through it. And then that kind of was what my life became, just getting through my period. And, I've been cooking my whole life. I simultaneously got my first job in a kitchen when I was 11. So my food journey and my endo journey just like started really young altogether. And yeah, it was rough. I got on birth control when I was 11 years old, and I was on birth control for I don't know, 14, 15 years consecutively, which is like just not recommended. It was just not good for me mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Like the whole aspect of
It,
that was really
it,
hard.
is that normal? Like, forgive me, as a guy, I just honestly don't know. Like, is it normal for an 11-year-old to be on birth control?
It's really normal to prescribe birth control for, painful period symptoms. And I think that it's too often easily prescribed, it's really so much of a band-aid for it. We're not looking at the root cause. We're not looking at like what that person's either eating, whether it's a child or an adult. And so I think it's too normal. It's so often it's like you come to your doctor with painful period symptoms, and the first thing they recommend is birth control instead of really looking at that whole person and what's really going on. And I really love Chinese medicine because Chinese medicine looks at your period as like the marker for your health. So if something's going on with your period, it's like, okay, like we need to look at that first, deal with those symptoms first, and then look at the rest of the person. Where I feel like Western medicine kind of deals with periods as just like a symptom and really just trying to like deal with the symptom instead of being like, okay, if this is wrong, there's a lot of other things that are going on too.
All right. So again, as a guy, if any of these questions are stupid, just be like, "Hey, Chuck, that's a dumb
No, it's so
question."
important that guys talk about this stuff. Like my husband is, we always joke. He's like, I never thought I would say the word uterus so much in my life. But he knows so much now. He can help my friends if my friends have issues, and I'm not around. So it's good that guys are aware because it creates a more compassionate community around women and what we go through.
I know, right. And like, what are some of the things that you wish that guys did understand when it comes to endometriosis and periods? Because I'm telling you, we're in
Yeah,
the dark about all of that.
all the things. Yeah, I mean, I think
Things.
like compassion, all the things. I'm sorry. I
All
did
of them,
just
every last one of them in the
everything.
dark, blinders. Our entire
I
life,
mean,
blinders.
I know, sorry, but it's kind of not wrong. No, I mean, I just wish guys were a little bit more compassionate towards women, especially when we're looking like in the workplace, in the corporate workplace. I mean, working in restaurants for as long as I did, I feel like women are expected to grind as hard as men in physical jobs and even like mental and emotional jobs too, especially during that time of the month when, like, honestly, we should get some sort of time off, even like a day, but we feel guilty having that time off. We feel guilty asking for help. We feel guilty, needing that support. And I think I really learned this in my current relationship, my boyfriend, who's now my husband. I was in the worst of my endometriosis journey when him and I were dating. So, I was in so much pain. I was like going through all of these crazy medical things, which we can get into if you want to, but he just saw me suffering from such an early point in our relationship. And he was like, dude, like, this is not normal. Like, you should not be in this much pain on this many painkillers, going to the doctor this many times, flopping from birth control to IUD to arm implant, and just being in like chronic pain. He was taking me to the hospital every single month for my period, And so that's like an extreme case, but he really saw it because of the extreme aspect of it and was like, this isn't okay. I'm in this with you. Like, you need me to advocate for you, because I also would feel ashamed in the doctor's office to speak up for myself, because I would feel kind of like, my experience didn't really matter. And so he would remind me and be like, no, you're not crazy. This isn't in your head. Like, you are experiencing this. And he was there to advocate for me. And I think women need that. We're tired. It's hard existing in this world in 2023 in general, whether you're a man, a woman, whatever you identify as. But as someone that experiences period pains or is constantly going to the doctor for period pains, I mean, if you look at it, it takes over 10 years on average for someone to be diagnosed with endometriosis. And that is because it's not that that person's not going to the doctor for those 10 years. It's because we're constantly just being told our pain isn't real, or just being put on birth control, or being kind of just pushed underneath the rug. And it's like men can be like such a great reminder for our doctors, and they can advocate for us, because sometimes it's hard to advocate for yourself.
Yeah, and I think that, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I would assume that the fact that he was with you and was such an ally and an advocate for you from early on in your relationship to deal with something as personal
Yeah.
as your period pains. I mean, to me, that probably elevated him from boyfriend status to he's the one status
Yeah.
pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah, I mean, there's no hiding anything at that point, like, it's all out on the table,
For sure.
So,
For
yeah.
sure. I want to go back to 11-year-old Chef Bae
Yeah,
when this was first starting. Again, being a guy wouldn't ever know, but being a teen, being young, like that's awkward as it is, just trying to figure everything out. And
yeah,
then you get your first period. But on top of that, you're having like all of this wicked bad pain to go with it.
mhm,
Like, did you feel like even more of an outcast, even more confused,
yeah.
ashamed? Talk to me about being 11 and going through this.
I had such a rough teenage years, man. Like, it
I
was
bet.
rough, not only was I the first person to start my period amongst my peers, but throughout middle school and high school, I was, like, severely bullied, and there was a few reasons for that. Like, I grew up in a super wealthy, white, like, affluent kind of neighborhood in Colorado, and my family was not wealthy. So, like, when everyone's getting these very expensive Christmas gifts and then I'm not, you kind of just don't fit in automatically. Not only that, but I was the first person to like have a butt and like, have curves and all of that thing. So all the girls kind of just didn't treat me as an equal from the very beginning. And then I got on birth control from a super young age. So it made me very just like aggravated and angry and depressed. And so it kind of just like made everything that was going on 10 times worse. And then I would react to it. And it just kind of like, once I got to high school, I was on Yaz, I got put on the NuvaRing, I was on painkillers, just trying to function. I missed a lot of school. I started partying super, super young, just to kind of deal with, I kind of used alcohol and substances as just like just an outlet to kind of deal with what I was feeling just from being a teenager, being a teenager is hard in general, but from being a teenager who was also on super strong birth control, who was also, dealing with extreme pain, who was also, like an outcast in her school. And so it definitely like affected me a lot. But I'm grateful for that because I feel like I have such a different perspective on just everything because that experience was so difficult for me that now as an adult, I just have like a lot more compassion for other people going through something or people who are different or people who don't feel good or don't feel like themselves because I there definitely is a way out and high school's like not the end of the world, like it's just the beginning. So,
Oh yeah, it feels like it at the time though. I
oh,
mean,
man,
that
it's
those
rough.
4 years, that is your entire world.
Mhm.
Um, and you
Yeah,
think that it's an awfully big world until you get out and you're like, man, that was like a little teeny tiny micro kind of a universe that I was living in there.
totally. Yeah.
Like you say that you were drinking and using substances at such
Mhm.
a young age. I mean, my heart just goes out to you because you're turning to these things, I'm guessing, initially, maybe to kind of cope with a lot of the emotional stress that's going on from being
Yeah.
bullied and feeling like an outcast. But how quickly did you also discover, like, yeah, this is a pretty strong pain reliever as well?
I mean, I didn't really realize what I was doing until like later on in life. I think I didn't have a good relationship with my parents. My parents just thought I was like out of control. I had terrible grades, but the thing that I always think back to is like I always had a job. And so even when I was in high school, I was managing a bakery. So I would wake up at 4 in the morning. I would drive, whether it was blizzarding, because I lived in Colorado in Boulder. So I would drive, through the snow, whatever I needed to do, go to work. I would make pastries and bagels and like set open the cafe and like get everything ready. I would work a full shift before going to high school. And even though I had like a graduating 1.7 GPA, which was not great, I, had a job. I bought my first car. I was very independent. And so, I don't even remember what your original question was, to be honest, but I
It,
I
it's
was
cool.
okay, like, I remember now, I was okay, like, I think back on that and, like, I was using it just as a coping mechanism, but I was still doing what I needed to do to survive and to figure out how to be a person in this world because that's the hardest part. When you're a teenager, you're like, what is this? Like you're between childhood and adulthood and you just can't really figure it out. But like because I had financial security, because I was able to like, and that's why I'm so grateful that I didn't grow up in a super wealthy household because it gave me that work ethic to just like, if I wanted a car, I had to buy it. If I wanted new things, I needed to buy them for myself. If I wanted to go to college, I was going to have to take out the loans or pay for it. So, yeah. And then my poor grades actually led me to go to Le Cordon Bleu because they'll take anybody. The dropout rate the dropout rate is so high that they're like, "Whatever, like, you can come and see if you can, like, deal with this." And then, so I was
What an
like, "Sure, take
endorsement.
my money,
What
let's
an
go."
endorsement. What an endorsement. They'll take anybody. Oh, man, that's
They
so
will
good.
it's like a
Oh, man,
70% dropout rate, so,
pretty
it's
high.
hard. It's not an easy choice to go I mean, Le Cordon Bleu does not exist in the United States anymore,
Right.
but it is, culinary school, like going to CIA, the Culinary
Yeah.
Institute of America, it's hard. It's like a super hard choice for
Yeah, I wanna talk to you
education.
about that in
Yeah.
just a second, but, that going to high school and just having a rough go of it, clearly, it's not a lack of intelligence that got you to that 1.7. Like, I graduated by the skin of my teeth as well. Like,
Yeah.
I had to literally pass all of my finals, majority of them with a B plus average or higher in order to graduate because I had
Mm,
missed so much school. My grades were absolutely in the tank. For me, it was because of like crippling depressions. Our circumstances were a little bit different, but I totally get you. And so I just want to say to anybody who's a teenager who might be listening or to their parents,
yeah,
just because your kid has bad grades does not necessarily mean that they are stupid or unintelligent in any sense
exactly.
of the word. Like you strike me as actually, Chef, being a highly intelligent human
Thank
being.
you.
If I didn't know, or if I didn't hear you say that you graduated with a 1.7, I'd have been like, "The hell you say?" It's like No way.
Yeah. I mean, even if there's parents listening and your kid's a loose cannon, like there's something else going on, you know? So instead of getting mad at them or, being like, oh my God, my child's so out of control, try to like, do some digging and try to figure, like in a nice, respectful way, but try to figure out what's actually going on with them because a lot of times, like, it's not just what you see. There's always something else, whether it's with kids at school or something physical's happening with them or, maybe they're having like a self identity crisis. And I think being there for them and like being able to really listen to them is so important instead of just pointing the finger at them and being like, you're problematic because, I'm the
Castaway.
queen of problematic, to be honest, sometimes,
Hey, but you
especially when
know
I was a
what?
teen.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe chaos suits you well. You wear it well. I think you're controlled
Yeah,
chaos these
I
days, though.
do love chaos, hence the
Yeah,
chef culture.
it is what it is. So no surprise, you go to Le Cordon Bleu where they will
Mhm.
accept everybody, but clearly not everybody graduates.
Yeah.
Um, so here's the interesting thing. Like you go down this route. Had you yet put two and two together that some of the pain that you're experiencing, your endo symptoms might be driven by the food that you're eating?
No. So when I went to culinary school, I gained 30 pounds like that because you're eating pastries and butter and everything's cooked in pork belly and like, you're learning how to butcher whole animals and it's really intense. And I also was continuing my party culture lifestyle. I was living in San Francisco. And San Francisco back then, it was 2010. So I always say that like the golden years of San Francisco before the big tech boom was 2009 to like 2014. And it was a fun place to live. Like we had so much fun. Like a lot of my friends were part of the gay community. So we were just always in the Castro. And I, started to gain a lot of friends that owned clubs and that kind of thing. So I was working like a maniac and I was partying like a maniac. And that is chef culture, like that is kind of what you're taught. That's what your mentors do. That's what your coworkers do. I would wake up in the morning and I was working at a cafe before I would go to work. I would work as a line cook. I mean, before I would go to school, and then I would work out as a line cook after I would go to school, and then I would party. And I would probably get 1 to 2 hours of sleep a night. So, of course, my symptoms were like horrific. Like, I was treating my body terribly. And I was just trying to fit in and function. And I finally felt like for the first time in my life, I was free. After a terrible high school experience, I was finally like getting friends that I really liked and like being respected by my peers for the most part. And I really loved it. And it crashed and burned for sure. Basically did that for like 4 years. I graduated culinary school, started working as a private chef, and was working in restaurants. And I just basically crashed and burned. My symptoms got so bad that I just like couldn't really work anymore. I didn't want anyone to call me a chef. I was just very like I just didn't even know who I was. I had a very much like self-identity crisis. And I ended up moving back in with my parents because I couldn't pay my rent because I was in so much pain when I was like 24, 25, which was pretty rough.
Again, like, still such a young age, right? You're
Yeah.
not 11, you're in your early 20s, but we're still figuring everything out, it seems, at that age as
My
well.
God.
I mean,
Yeah.
doing what you were doing, you mentioned searching for an identity. I mean,
Mhm.
definitely you're still going through that, and then you have this crazy setback.
Yeah.
Before you had to move back in, like, did you know, like, "Man, I'm gonna go to work today and I'm gonna get sick." Like, that to me seems every single day, like, if you had to know that and that was going to be your day in and day out experience, that's a drag, chef, like a
Yeah.
major, major drag.
Well, and I think the important thing that I want to say here too is I was undiagnosed with endometriosis at the time. So basically, every time I would go to a doctor or a specialist, they would like say, oh, this could be endometriosis because, you have to think back then it wasn't as talked about as it is now. There wasn't as good of, diagnostic surgeries as there is now. And, you know, surgery was always on the table, but I would be like, "Hey, I'm super young. Like, what if something happens?" They'll be like, "Well, if we find a cyst or something, we could, we might have to remove your ovary. You have to sign all this paperwork that maybe if you lose an organ, like it's just part of it." And I just wasn't really ready to take the risk to even do the diagnostic surgery because, there's complications. And I was like, I'm so young. I'm just not ready for that. And, during that time when I was living in San Francisco, so part of my endometriosis pain was like insane back pain, like so, 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 so crippling and debilitating, where I would lay down and like my right leg would just like shake, so crazy. And so I went to the hospital one time because it was just so bad. And they decided that they were going to do a spinal tap on me because someone decided that maybe it's a meningitis symptom. Well, it's a teaching hospital, and I was like someone's first spinal tap, and it went super wrong. I ended up getting like a bunch of nerve damage, and it was just a really bad situation. I ended up having like a leak, had to go and get like I forget what it's called, where they put like your own blood back in there to kind of clot the spine. But that ended up causing me like even more pain. So that was, it was like, I went to the hospital for someone to help me. And then I ended up leaving the hospital with like a new problem. And that's kind of the experience of a lot of people with endometriosis is they go to the hospital hoping for something good to happen, and then you leave worse off than when you went in. So that's why a lot of times people won't even seek medical help because they're afraid that it's just going to make it worse, because especially then there just wasn't a lot of awareness. So yeah, it got to the point where it just got so bad that I had to go back home, and I didn't have a good relationship with my parents at the time, like I was saying. So this is a real big blow on my ego to just, I had a whole life in San
Mm.
Francisco that I just had to let go of because I just couldn't do it anymore.
Man, that's a whole heap. Oh my gosh. I'm curious, like, I know that you were talking about turning to alcohol and other
Mhm.
substances to kind of help cope, but a lot of people also will turn to food to make them feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
Did you also go down that road? What was your diet like at the time?
Yeah, so I was actually a pescatarian vegetarian at the time, mainly because when I was in culinary school, I was learning how to butcher animals, and my grandfather was a butcher. My great great grandfather was a butcher. And I was just like I was really good at it. And I prided myself on being really fast and good at it. And then I just kind of like one day I just woke up and was like, this is insane. And I think we visited it was a factory farm or a slaughterhouse, or I kind of blocked it out of my memory, to be honest, but in culinary school. So once that happened, I was like, I'm going to not eat meat anymore. This is kind of insane. So I stopped eating meat. But the problem with that is like most vegetarians, you eat a lot of cheese and bread constantly. So I was definitely like a cheese lover. At the time I had cystic acne, I had like horrible period pains, which I now am like, duh, dairy makes everything worse. But yeah, I definitely used food for sure. I mean, I love food. I love to eat. I love to wine and dine. Like I absolutely love it. It's my absolute favorite thing to do. It's my favorite activity. If my husband's like, "What do you want to do?" I'm like, "Let's go eat at a restaurant." It's my favorite thing. So yeah, I guess I used it in a sense, but not as much as like maybe you would think in that time.
So, I guess then when did the great awakening, so to speak, happen for you? Like,
Yeah.
when did you just wake up one morning and say, "Enough is enough. I need to
Yeah.
look in another direction and figure this thing out"?
Yeah, so I moved home, and then within 2 months of moving home, I had kind of reconnected with one of my really good friends, and he was using, drugs at the time, and that was still kind of like partying, using a lot of alcohol and just trying to I was living at home with my parents, I was in pain, I, like, had gone to this, I'm gonna tell 2 stories at the same time, I guess. I had gone to this spine specialist because, like I said, from the spinal tap and my back from the endometriosis was just in so much chronic pain. Like I was just in so much pain that this doctor had recommended that I fuse my spine together. But because of like what had happened to me and like what was showing on the MRI, there was like this high chance that I would never walk again. And I was like, what? This is your answer for me? So I had that kind of awakening where I was like, okay, I can no longer depend on like this medical system to help me in this way because I just feel like I have never gotten a good answer from anyone. And then simultaneously, one of my best friends had passed away from substance abuse. He was like my prom date when we were in high school. We grew up down the street from each other. I had come home, we had reconnected, and then he had passed away 2 months after me moving home. And so, both of those things kind of simultaneously happened. And I just was like, I need to get my life together. Like, I can't continue this path. I'm so young. I feel so old. I feel so aged. Like, what is my career even? Like, I don't even know what's happening. So, that's when I went to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. I was like, I'll just do this health coaching thing and see what happens. And that's when I kind of started to just learn. And then I kind of got addicted to learning and reading research papers and watching documentaries. And that's kind of where it all started. And that's when I started really learning about not plant based so much at the time, but I was learning about chemicals in our food and like refined sugar and all that kind of stuff, alcohol, substances. I was learning about birth control. I just was like, I'm just going to learn about this stuff because I felt so helpless. I felt like this helpless little person that didn't know anything and was expecting everyone else to know all the answers. But I just realized that, like, no one's going to advocate for yourself like you can. And, I started using my doctor's appointments as opportunities for them to help me answer questions because I had a lot of questions that I needed to be answered. And so that's when I say the initial awakening happened. I eventually moved to San Diego after living at home for like a year. I got this offer to open up a cooking school. The cooking school actually didn't work out like a couple weeks into moving to San Diego, but I decided to stay. And my endo symptoms were still really bad. I ended up bartending at this restaurant. It was like I couldn't, I was like trying to get my private chef business back up. I was still bartending. My endo was still bad. I was like, ugh, I feel like I'm getting somewhere, but I'm not really sure where this is. And that's actually where I met my husband, as we were coworkers at the bar. And we became really good friends. And then we started dating. And then, I started getting clients as a private chef. And then I had surgery for my endo. I was like, you know what? I'm over this. I'm just going to get this diagnostic surgery. I just need to know. Like I knew, but I didn't know. So then I got the surgery for my endo. And I had just endometriosis all over me, like everywhere, and the doctor was like, of course you're in pain. But I had a lot of complications in my surgery. It was a super intense recovery. And I looked at my doctor because I had already known better, but I looked at my doctor and I was like, can you tell me if endometriosis and diet are connected? And she looked me dead in the eye and she was like, no, there's no evidence showing that endometriosis and diet are connected. There's nothing you can do naturally to heal any of this. You're going to be on pills and painkillers and birth control for the rest of your life. And I was like, okay, I'm done with you. Like, this is insane. I can't believe you just said that to me. And I basically used that conversation as fuel to keep going. And I went plant-based pretty much immediately after that. My husband went plant-based with me. I just was over it. And we both went plant-based together. Within a couple months, my cystic acne went away. A lot of my really intense symptoms went away. I started to actually heal from the surgery. And then within 6 months, I got off birth control. I got off opiates. I got off any hormone replacements. And yeah, my life is completely changed. It's also I got rid of all the toxic cleaning products in my house. I de-stressed my life. I, got rid of the toxic hair care products, the toxic everything, and it just completely changed my life. I mean, it changed my husband's life too. So he's a totally different person now from going plant-based. He's even more vegan than I am, I swear, at this point. And he, grew up in Chicago. He grew up eating, deep dish pizzas and hot dogs and all that stuff. And he saw the amount of pain I was in and was just like, dude, we're doing this together. It's
Right
over.
on.
It's happening. Yeah.
I would think though, having this training and being a chef actually puts you in a pretty good position to make this
Mhm.
transition over to a plant-based diet. A lot of people, who make this transition really struggle to even know the first thing
Yes.
about cooking a proper plant-based meal. Like you've already got all the tools in your kitchen,
Yeah.
about flavor profiles. Clearly now you're learning about nutrition, having gone through IIN. Like
Mhm.
you were ready for this. Like you were legitimately ready to make this step.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I feel like I don't know if you believe in destiny or fate or whatever, but I feel like this is where I was headed. I think Once I made the choice to go vegan, not only did I become a better chef, but I got re-inspired to be in the kitchen. I got re-inspired to cook and share that passion that I have for food with other people again. And it no longer became about fitting into the boys club, because that's what a lot of, I find, restaurant and chef culture is like, you're trying to fit in, you're like, you're just trying to like, exist essentially. And at this point I just wasn't existing anymore. I was really on a mission to thrive through food and do it in a way that was so good, because if I'm not going to eat something unless it's like, oh, you eat it and you're just like, oh my god, that's it. You just want to feel all the feelings, you want to feel all the emotions when you're eating. And so that was my mission. I was like, I'm going to make plant-based food insane. Like, I'm going to make it so good, I'm going to make everyone love it. And it's funny because I was private chefing and none of my clients were vegan. And so I was like, when I first went vegan, I was still cooking non-vegan things for my clients. But I had this awakening where I was literally gutting a fish for one of my clients, and I was crying I was actually listening to a plant proof podcast. And while I was gutting this fish, I'm listening to this podcast about veganism, and I'm crying into this fish that I'm gutting. And I was like, this is the last piece of meat I'm ever going to cook. And then I sat all my clients down and I was like, you guys can fire me if you want, but we're all going vegan. Like, I can't do this. Like, we're doing this together. And
How did that go over?
some of my clients did fire me, but that's fine. That's okay. Some of my clients didn't. And I have this one family that's been with me since I moved to San Diego. And, the dad has type 2 diabetes. The mom had really bad PCOS symptoms. And we were able to they're not totally vegan by any means. But they eat vegan like half the time with me. And even just that, we were able to, he's basically in remission from his diabetes, and she has no symptoms of PCOS anymore. So it's pretty amazing what the power of food can do, like, even if they're doing it part-time, So
Legit.
yeah,
How
super
how
cool.
quickly did you begin to notice your symptoms were starting to alleviate after you
Yeah.
decided to make that switch?
I would say like 3 months. Like, I noticed more energy and like all the kind of like surface level symptoms pretty quickly, but I would say like really the symptoms for my endo that I was experiencing, like my back pain and all that stuff, it took about 3 months, 3 to 6 months to really start to feel the difference. And then once I got off birth control and was able to really detox off birth control, because I had been on birth control since I was 11. So it was like my body needed some serious time to just recalibrate. Once I was able to really feel like what it felt like off birth control, oh, it was like a whole new world for me. I
Mm,
just everything changed. My face was really skinny at the time, so my face kind of just like got healthier. Like, everything about me just got so much healthier. My eyes were brighter. I slept better. I used to have nightmares every night. Like, every single night I would have nightmares. And then once I went plant-based and got off birth control, I stopped having nightmares every night. So it's just like these
wow.
tiny little things that you don't really think about that you deal with that were starting to just change. I would have a peaceful night's sleep, which I didn't realize people just didn't have nightmares every night. I thought like, oh, you process trauma at
I mean,
nighttime. you
yeah,
know,
right. Like if it's like your routine, it is normal to you. It's not pleasant, but it's
it's
normal,
just
right?
normal.
And you
Yeah,
just
exactly.
assume
Hmm.
that's just the way that it is. And
Yeah.
I think back to that conversation that you had with your doctor about, is diet connected in any way with endometriosis? And the doctor saying no, because doctors aren't trained in
Hmm.
nutrition. And I think back to that, and had you listened to that, how differently things may have played out for you. And it reminds me of the conversation. I talk about this all the time. The conversation I had with my own surgeon, bariatric surgeon, where he told me after I had lost like 200 pounds, he's like, you need to eat a hamburger. And I
Mm,
wasn't even plant based at that point, but I was like, dude, you're literally putting crack back in the palm of somebody who's
yeah.
struggling with addiction. Like, why would you prescribe a hamburger? And I too did not take the doctor's advice that day. But had I'd
Hmm.
be in a much different place than I am right now, just as you would be had you listened to your own doctor.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. Now let me ask you this. When it comes to endometriosis specifically, did you find that for you, the biggest gains came from taking certain foods out of your diet, or are there certain foods that you turn to now that really nourish and help
Mhm.
keep you functioning at a high level?
That's a really great question. So we'll answer the first one first. So taking foods out, dairy and meat products, like the amount of estrogen that's in them, and not only that, like I also look at it from an energetic perspective. So a lot of times those animals are, I mean, all the time, there's no humane, happy thing that happens between a pasture raised cow and the slaughterhouse. So I'll just say that, but they're not happy animals. So I call it petrified meat. You know, you're eating a piece of meat or you're eating dairy that has anxiety in it, has tons of stress, a lot of times has cancer. It's just disease, like dealing with, like, imagine that animal is just so stressed out. So you're eating that energy. So I really believe in that as well. And, you know, really looking at what's inside of the dairy, what's inside of the meat. So getting rid of dairy and meat was like massive for me, especially dairy was like such an insane game changer. And you know, it's interesting because you hear a lot of stuff on the internet about how like dairy is good for your hormones and it balances them, but it's just doesn't. So, you know, it's just like I finally was able to like push through the weeds when it came to like crazy nutrition information online. And also getting rid of refined sugar was massive for me, processed foods. And what else? I'm trying to think. Coffee on an empty stomach, you know, like that kind of stuff, just really spiking my cortisol levels. Like I really was just trying to like, okay, first thing in the morning, green smoothie, not a coffee. I used to drink like a whole milk vanilla triple latte every morning. Like that's not helpful for anybody. You know what I mean? Like, of course you go into fight or flight mode immediately after that. So yeah, it was pretty much meat, dairy, refined sugar, processed foods, and then a lot of like the pastries and sweets that I was eating, which goes into like the dairy, refined sugar. I mean, I was a pastry chef. I loved that stuff. So it was really like a process of unlearning for me and just really learning how to enjoy different kinds of food, which is definitely a learning process. Like it's not like one day I just woke up and hated croissants, you know. I just had to learn that they're just not good for me and it's okay to like wish them well, but like not necessarily eat them, you know? And then when it came to adding things into my diet, you know, I started cycle syncing the last couple years and that's been really amazing. So, for instance, like when I'm ovulating, I eat a lot of raw fruits and vegetables because that really can help absorb estrogen and it just makes me feel really amazing when I'm going through that cycle. Or, like, for instance, when I'm going through my period, I eat a ton of lentils and leafy greens and beans because I really just want to like up my iron intake, up my protein intake during that time because, you know, you're losing so many nutrients when you're on your period. And it's really important that you know, replenish because a lot of times, if we give into all of our period cravings, you know, we go through our period and then it's like we're on the next phase of our cycle and we're super depleted because our body just went through something huge. And so, if we're not nourishing during that phase, then you're going to get to your follicular phase, which is right after your menstrual phase, and you're going to be so tired, so depleted. And I want to feel like amazing, you know, like I want to feel amazing after my period. I want to be like, I just got through that. Like I'm killing it. I'm feeling good. So, that's really important for me as well. And, you know, often in the spring, summer, I do something called what I call raw till 4. I'm actually, I think, going to create like a little course around it because I just absolutely love it where I eat raw food until 4 p.m. And it's so fun and exciting because I get so many greens in, so many raw fruits and vegetables in. I eat things like kelp noodles and nori wraps and things that I just normally wouldn't eat if I wasn't kind of like challenging myself to do something different. And that has been amazing. I just feel like my skin is super I'm doing it right now actually. So I just feel like my skin is super glowy. I have more energy. I sleep so much better. And especially after like the fall winter months when we're eating a lot of heavier foods and we're kind of like slowing down a little bit and cozying up. I love this raw till 4 mentality because you're just eating abundance of plants that you normally wouldn't and you're getting just them in their like alive whole food form and it just keeps my creativity popping during the day. So, yeah, I think that was a long-winded answer to your question, but that's what I'm vibing with, especially right now.
It was, but, like, I'm picturing this whole course now, like, Slay with Bae, right? I just think that that would be super epic. I think you
Yeah.
could do a world of good and have a world of fun, coaching people up, so to speak. I think that
Yeah.
that's fantastic. Slay
Thanks.
with Bay. Write it down,
Play with
take it,
Bae.
run with it.
Okay.
Um, awesome stuff. Awesome, awesome, awesome stuff. One bit of housekeeping before we wrap up. You
Yeah.
mentioned hormones that were in meat and dairy, but then you also said soy. A lot of people, again, equate
Mm.
soy with estrogen. Is that a concern with you at all?
No, not at all. So, there's actually a ton of studies that are coming out right now about phytoestrogens actually being super helpful for people with period problems, and how they're actually decreasing your risk for things like breast cancer and ovarian cancer. And, I had Dr. Clapper on the show, and he was saying that I love Dr. Clapper. He was saying that, like, um, if soy, like, had a real estrogen in it and it actually gave you boobs, like, it would be the most popular thing to eat, and he's right, there actually is estrogen in dairy products. No one blinks an eye when they think about estrogen in dairy products, but the phytoestrogen in soy is totally different. Soy is one of the healthiest things that we can eat. It's a complete plant protein, and as long as you buy it organic, you're good to go. I definitely worry about the amount of glyphosate that's sprayed on soy products. Um, that are non-organic, so I really stay away from that. Like, even eating tofu out at a restaurant, it's hard to know if it's organic or not. So for me personally, I make a ton of tofu at home, or I make soy milk, or I'll drink soy milk from the store, but I always look and make sure it's just organic soybeans and water. When it comes to the ingredients, you really want to make sure about the ingredients. But yeah, we love soy in our house. We're all about tofu. Like, crispy tofu, I could literally live on it. So
Yeah, I saw one of the reels that you posted up on Instagram was just that, and the recipe that you used was like super simple. It was like
so
just a
easy.
couple of ingredients, and then
Mhm.
throw them in the air fryer at high heat. I
Yeah.
think you put them in there for 10 minutes, and then it was like game on.
It's so good. And, like,
Yeah.
I also have gotten really into pressing your tofu and then you freeze it and then you thaw it and then you marinate it. That's
Okay, hold on, hold
yeah.
on. No, no, I mean, what? Wow. Okay, why and how does this help? It sounds really
Okay.
easy. Let's maximize the tofu.
Yes, exactly. So basically, when you freeze and then de-thaw tofu, it makes it into like this amazing meaty consistency. So if you've ever had like mock duck at a Chinese restaurant or mock chicken or something like that, it's essentially what they do. They freeze the tofu first and then they marinate it, and it's amazing. It's so good. It makes it so meaty. And you have to press the tofu. So you press it's kind of like a process, but if you do it as your meal prep, you do like 5 blocks of tofu. You press it, you get all the water out, you freeze it, then you thaw it, and then you marinate it, and it's money.
Yo,
Mhm.
we're
Yeah.
gonna end with some knowledge today. That's what we just did. We just got all right. Freeze your tofu, boys and girls.
Yeah,
There you
it's super
go.
good.
That's your
Mhm.
roomy nugget of the day. Awesome,
There you go.
Chef Bay
Yeah.
coming into play. Like, yeah, man,
Thanks
we
for
got to
having
get you back
me.
on. This has been a blast.
I
So
know.
here's the deal. I love your website address, by the way.
Thank you.
chefbay.kitchen. You have a
Yes.
dot kitchen web address.
Yeah.
Dope. Blows.com out of the water. Who's got time for that? We're going for the kitchen.
Yes, I mean, you can enter chefbae.com too, it'll go to chefbae.kitchen.
Not nearly as
Um,
fun.
it's all connected. But yeah, it seems like more fun, chefbae.kitchen. When I decided to be Chef Bae, most of my friends call me Bae, like 7 or 8 years ago. I was like, "Let's see what we can have fun with here." So yeah, chefbae.kitchen. I also have a cookbook. It's called Cook, Heal, Go Vegan. It came out almost 2 years ago now. I can't believe it. But yeah, I have a series on TikTok called Breaking Up with Dairy. Hint, hint, that's the title of my new book coming out in 2025. And so if you're looking to break up with dairy, you want amazing dairy-free recipes that are made from whole food ingredients, head over to TikTok. I also post them on Instagram as well. And yeah, I'm just all about helping people thrive and eat what they want to eat. Like, you can eat what you want and what you need. You don't have to give up amazing flavor profiles in order to heal your body. And I think that is such a common misconception. Like, you can still have insane crave worthy food and heal. Like, it's possible, and it's a learning curve for sure. But like, you can do it, you
You
know?
tell it. You tell it, girl.
You
You
can
just
do
keep on going.
this.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Just go. Like crave worthy food and heal. Like, man,
Mhm.
you on to something. You on
That's
it.
what
That's
I'm
an instant
hoping.
follow right there. That's what that is. Instant follow. So click those links that are in the show description
Yes.
or in the episode notes. We've got you there for TikTok. We've got your gram on there. We've got a link to your
Yeah.
cookbook. And of course, chefbae.kitchen. Bae, B-A-I. So
Bae. Yeah.
super dope, Chef Bae. Thank you so much for making the time and coming on and being vulnerable and sharing your story, but then having a whole lot of fun with us at the same time. You are a rock star in every sense of the word.
Thanks. It was my pleasure. I loved being on. Thanks so much.
If your health IQ is a couple of points higher than it was a few minutes ago, go ahead and like this video or subscribe to the YouTube channel. And to take it even higher, head over to Apple Podcast or wherever you get your favorite shows. Look for The Exam Room by the Physicians Committee. Hit the subscribe button there as well and help to make your world a healthier place.